Good evening and welcome to the January 9th, 2018 Planning Commission's meeting. If we can please rise. Join me in the pledge. Peter, if you can lead us.
I'd be more pleased.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Shannon, could we have roll call?
Messina?
Here.
Fleming?
Here.
Ingalls?
Here.
Lutrip?
Here.
Mandel? Here. Rumpler?
Here.
Ward?
Here. Thank you, Shannon. If we have a review of the minutes and approval.
I move to approve the minutes of 12/12/17.
I have a motion to approve. I need a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. At this time, we have any public comments? Anyone would like to speak? I see we have 3 students here again. If you guys want to say anything at all, this is the time to say something that might be on your mind. Not at all? Okay. Thank you. Staff?
Good evening, Commissioners. A few updates for you. And first of all, Happy New Year. It's
Thank
great
you.
to
Same
be
to you.
back here, 2018. We have, for February, there's going to be 4 items that we're going to be bringing to you, all public hearings, and one of those is the first round of amendments to our zoning code. So on the items that we've discussed 3 times now, I think. So the loopholes and kind of cleaning up some issues in the code. We also are moving forward with the East Sherman master plan work with our consulting team, with community builders and Cascadia partners. We are going to have a kickoff conference call later this week, and in March is when we're going to be having opportunities for the public to come and do some more workshops, some educational components, really weigh in more on what the design of East Sherman should be. So it's exciting to get that moving. I also was interviewed yesterday, as well as the end of last week, by a staff reporter with the Inlander. They are doing an article on growth in North Idaho, so that should be in this Thursday's edition. So they were just looking at what's going on in the area, and I talked about our comprehensive plan and some of the efforts, and they talked to other communities and Department of Labor's economist as well. So should be interesting. And for those that are following the progress of the short-term rental, the vacation rental ordinance, the fees are going to City Council next week.
Okay.
So they'll consider the fees for the permit and the renewal, and then we'll be able to start accepting applications shortly thereafter. And then lastly, I just wanted to give kudos to Commissioner Ward. He did a great job this morning introducing the mayor and being part of the State of the City and the Upbeat Breakfast. And the mayor talked about several things related to planning. Kind of as we're moving forward, it really relates to what we're doing with our work on the comprehensive plan and the zoning code. He talked about the need to focus on walkability, on connectivity, on pedestrian-oriented development, adaptive reuse of buildings, and affordable housing. So it's exciting. It's his vision is in alignment with what we're working on. So
Oh, great.
that's all.
Thank you. Sorry I missed that this morning. I had a conflict, but thanks for being here, Michael. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. We only have one hearing tonight, and that's a quasi-judicial, it's a PUD modification, PUD 2.17.m. This time, I guess Hillary? And before Hillary comes up, does any of the commissioners have a conflict? No? Okay, thanks.
Okay.
No.
No, it doesn't sound like you can hear me very well. So this is, there we go,
There you
PUD,
go.
yeah,
Yeah.
217 modification for the Tilford Place PUD. So you already talked about that. Idaho Waterfront LLC is requesting a minor modification of the approved PUD for Tilford Place. And this came before you, I believe it was in October. So you just saw this recently. So all they are truly requesting is a change to the rear setbacks from the 15-foot to the 10-foot. And the reason for this request is really just to allow more room for kind of a buildable area. They've heard from several in the development community that the square footage of the footprints with the 15-foot rear setback wasn't adequate for development. So So they wanted to have more options for flexible floor plans. So this is the subject property. It is in Riverstone. Here is BB, here's Riverstone, and here is Tilford Place leading up to the city park and the pond there. Just for context, here it is kind of as a larger area showing the site here outlined in yellow. General information, as I mentioned, this came before you in October, so this will be very familiar for you. The request was for 13 single-family lots, and as I mentioned, the deviation they're requesting is really related only to the rear setbacks. This is what was the preliminary plat that you approved and the proposed open space. The approved open space actually is shown here in red, and they did meet all the requirements for the 10% open space. Nothing's changed with that. These are the approved deviations. Just leave this on the screen for a moment. The PUD process, as you're aware, allows them to deviate from the standard setbacks in the zoning code. So these are all approved, and then these are the only one, as I mentioned, is truly just related to that rear setback. And this exhibit shows how that would look. So kind of the typical setback. The proposed is here with the cross hatches in the red, these marks here, and then the 15-foot is the original setback. So the commission must decide if this request meets the intent of the PUD regulations, and in doing so may wish to consider that certain benefits accrue to the city and the public by virtue of a planned unit development. And those items are here on the screen: the preservation of the private open space, ability to attach conditions to approval of the project, ability to lock in development plans for future through the approved final development plan, and the ability to negotiate solutions that benefit all. So there are the findings that you need to make for this, and I'll go through those quickly just so that they're in the public record, but as I mentioned, it's truly is related to only the setback. So none of the staff comments have changed for any of these items. So this finding B8A is the first finding, and whether or not the proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. This is within the Spokane River District area, and it is an area that is determined to be stable established. Here it is. The area of request is marked here. And as you can see, kind of the outlines indicating the areas that are the stable established are in purple, and then the green are the transition areas. The Spokane River District tomorrow, this area is expected to change quite a bit. As you know, a lot of these former mill sites are changing a lot along the river, and so we're expecting to see mixed use and development such as this occurring along the river. Finding B8B, whether or not the design and planning of the site is or is not compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on adjacent properties. And I'll just quickly go through these photos as well. I think you're all very familiar with the site and the context, but these are some of the surrounding uses. This is the pain management of North Idaho building. And this is the view from the southeast corner looking north. This is looking west toward the northwest bank. This is a view from the south portion of the property looking northwest. This is a view from Tilford Lane looking northeast toward the advanced healthcare of Coeur d'Alene. And this is a view toward the pain management of North Idaho building, a different view angle of that. And then this is looking toward the Spokane River and Northwest Bank. And then I believe it's the last one, looking toward Belle Reve and the Spokane River, so looking south from the northeast corner. The generalized land use pattern, it's largely getting developed in Riverstone. This is one of the last properties that Mr. Stone has in the Riverstone area, and this one is currently vacant, but it's surrounded by commercial uses. And then the yellow outlined here, this is the Belle Reve residential area within Riverstone. Existing zoning, it's zoned the C17 commercial. Finding B8C, the proposal is or is not compatible with the natural features of the site and the adjoining properties. So this site is relatively flat and vacant, as mentioned, and you saw the photos of that. It's surrounded by some commercial uses and then the residential to the south. These are the illustrative examples of proposed architectural styles that were submitted with the project that you had approved in October. See those again? And another example. Finding B8D, whether or not the location, design, and size of the proposal are such that the development will or will not be adequately served by existing public facilities and services. And these comments, as I mentioned, have not changed. All of the full detailed comments from the different departments are the same as the October, and those can be found in your staff report on pages 13 to 15. The change in the setback did not impact any of the departments. Finding B8E, the proposal does or does not provide adequate private common open space area as determined by the commission, no less than 10% of the gross land area free of buildings, streets, driveways, or parking areas. The common open space shall be accessible to all users of the development and usable for open space and recreational purposes. So this open space that was approved, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, does meet the 10% requirement, and they have the 4 tracks, A, B, C, and E. Those are noted here. So we have the various tracks and the descriptions of those. So they are going to be including a variety of open space areas, including a dog run. They're having a community garden, flower garden area with greenhouse, community open space with the vegetable and herb gardens, and a community open space area with sitting and picnic tables, and that will be open to the public for use by the Centennial Trail users. And as mentioned in the October one, this project is consistent with the interpretation by the Planning Commission on what open space should be. Finding B8F is the off-street parking. If it does or does not provide parking sufficient for users of the development, they have met this requirement with the 2 off-street parking spaces per dwelling unit, so no request for changes to that. B8G, that the proposal does or does not provide for an acceptable method for the perpetual maintenance of all common property. And they have established an HOA for this project with CCNRs that will be maintaining all the common areas. The previously approved conditions are listed here. The one that did get modified with the approval of the project was related to the road with Tilford, and we are working with the applicant and development team on this to get satisfactory easements in place. I do want to note as well that the applicant's narrative that was included in the packet made a comment saying that they were working on dedicating the road to the city, and that was inaccurate. So the process right now, we're close to having satisfactory easements for all parties to ensure that we have access to the park and that we have access to the city utilities, and that the city would maintain the roadway. So the rest of these conditions remain unchanged in the staff report. And so the request this evening is for the Planning Commission to consider this request to amend the PUD and to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice.
Okay.
Stand for any
Okay.
questions.
Any questions for Hillary? Oh, all right, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Hillary, do we have a sign-up sheet? Anybody sign
We
up?
do. Let's
Anyone on it?
look at that.
Okay, who's representing the applicant tonight? Come on up and speak. Rick, I'll need your name and address, and I'll swear you in.
My name's Rick Gunther, and I live at 701 West Lakeshore Drive.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, to help you God?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Anyway, as it was mentioned earlier, the whole reason for this is getting that additional 5 feet for that setback. Basically, it just gives us more flexibility in doing a better design for the homes. The way we had it before, they would just be too small, and it just didn't work well for the designs that we had, and that's pretty much it.
Okay. Any questions of Rick?
Rick, do you have any sense for what the fencing will be? Because I know there's a gate at the entry. Is there?
You know, I don't know what the
Intention?
fencing is at this point, what we're going to be putting in there.
Okay. I just, my reaction is the more we block off these covens, the airflow in those tiny lots, I encourage you not to do a totally site-obscuring, dense vinyl fence, because there's
Right.
no air transfer, you're now locked in.
Exactly. I don't know what
So,
the plan is, but I
I
think we'll work
discourage
with
them
you
from
whatever
that,
makes
especially with
sense
a
to the
10-foot
project.
backyard, yeah.
And if you see what Cunningham has done, I don't think that's kind of what we're looking at for the
Okay.
wooden fence, and I think it has gaps
Yeah,
about
it has gaps.
2.5 inches. We have flexibility on that because of what's across the street with the trees and that sort of thing in the
Okay.
mountains. So I
Yeah,
think that's going to be important for the development and for the marketing of that. So
Okay.
we want it to be airy and very inviting instead of being closed in like like
Yeah.
you're talking about. So,
yeah, we're seeing too much of that around here. Okay, perfect, thanks.
That's it.
thank you.
Thanks, Rick. I have a Ryan, sorry, I can't, March? March, yeah. You're in favor, but you don't wish to speak. Nicole Cummings, the same, in favor, you don't wish to speak. And Tim Wilson, you're in favor and you do wish to speak. You want to come up and say anything? If not, you're okay.
Speak if you have any questions.
Any questions for Tim, the architect on the project? No? Okay. I would say that's it, unless someone else has anything from the audience or us. I would ask for some discussion, and then a motion, and a closed public hearing.
I would offer some discussion. I'm not necessarily going to make a motion, but I think this makes a lot of sense. I have no concern with it. However, I would caution all of us, maybe, to be careful that as we go forward, I think there's going to be a lot of other of these Meadow Ranch, Cottage Grove, Park Place, and Park Rose, rather, a lot of these Circuit at Celtis, Riviera, you know, there's, by the nature of our city getting kind of penned in, we're going to see more of this. And I think we should be careful that, you know, we don't just think that 10% becomes kind of the presumptive standard for deviation. You remember the Cottage Grove PUD that we looked at, and we had a lot of people testify, and we ended up with, you remember the backwards L, you know, where we kind of restricted some of those deviated setbacks where that new development PUD backed up to existing conventional R8, for example. This thing is surrounded by commercial, as Hillary mentions. You know, there's no kind of blending into existing neighborhood, encroachment kind of discharacter issues or something of that nature. I have no concerns with this whatsoever, but again, I think this shouldn't just become the standard that 10% is always going to be good in these kind of similar developments.
I'll comment on that, too. I mean, for as many hearings we have on subdivisions and stuff, I don't think there's any that hasn't come to us that didn't ask for some sort of variation, whether it's a side yard setback or backyard setback. And I'm not saying they're wrong about coming to us, because that's what they have to do. And it's up to us to make that decision, whether or not, as you talked about, and have discussions about whether it is right or not. Some are pretty cut and dry, some might not be, but at least the process is working.
To finish that thought, again, I think it makes sense here because of the uniqueness of this. It's surrounded by commercial. It's really a little pocket neighborhood in commercial. You know, there's not that, that adjacency conflict whatsoever. There's no testimony that, from the surrounding businesses that, these houses are going to be too close or something like that, so.
I appreciate it, John.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, Peter.
We had another comment, too, about fencing. Are these issues that we can sort of incorporate in our revised strategic plan? Setting the tenor maybe more along the lines you were talking about, John, and maybe something about fence. So maybe this is something that, I certainly support this, but, in the future, we can work incorporating in our strategic plan.
Well, I think that's the question staff can look at, but as I mentioned, I think we're always going to have these because there's less land in the city of Coeur d'Alene, and everybody's going to want to get as much as they can, which is their right to do, and that's up to staff to say, all right, what can we do perhaps or not, but
But that's the issue, there's less land, so how can we, and maybe we've got a perfect plan, I don't know.
Yeah, appreciate your comment on that as well. Thanks. Any other comments, discussion about anything?
I have a quick comment.
Okay.
I wasn't here in October, and so I was, this is all new to me. And I work that area a great deal. I work all along Bellerive, and I'm working in a very more modern aesthete. And I find these cottage-style kind of Fort Grounds arrive Midtown look is kind of on its way out. And I'm a little concerned, and maybe this is driven from the real estate side, but I don't want this city to look like one big craftsman HOA. And Tim knows me, and I'm very much at the forefront. And I worry that this little isolated village is going to look like someone just airlifted the Fort Grounds in and dropped it into the middle of these very contemporary buildings around them. I'd like to see a little more nod so that it doesn't look odd as this city at that Riverstone fills in. I mean, everything in that area now is moving toward more millennial, more edgy, more, slope roof. And I'm not a big fan of slope roofs that look like sheds. I'm not advocating that, but I do find this to be such an isolated look. And I know that the investment firm did the brick, and maybe it's integrating brick into this, or something that says a nod to what's all around you, because this is just like out of left field. And because I wasn't here, I shouldn't speak to this, but in reality, I have to say, and I'm also concerned that it's very conventional. You have your front doors all facing one another, but you don't have any nod to the river or the lake. Me, if this was my house, I want to be looking at the river. I want to be looking at the lake. These are turning their backs on those. So I do know that Tim's in the middle of trying to get that going, but I really would encourage you to acknowledge the connection and the reason for these being where they are, which is adjacent to the river and overlooking this amazing little pond. So I'm just seeing this thing dropped in going, this could be suburbia anywhere. And it is an urban environment, it is pedestrian friendly, and I'm not seeing that connection of smart growth connecting with this neighborhood and this adjacency. Bicycles, people moving front and back. It just doesn't look like where I would expect in that area. And that's just my little 2 cents worth, but it's a nod before this closes the door. And we've now taken that backyard even smaller. If it were me, I'd be saying, let's do duplexes, let's do quads, let's do something that engages with the street and the modernist approach that's in the area. This just looks too much like the Fort Grounds to me. But I'm a stylist, this is what I do, and I'm reacting. So I hope, Tim, you're welcome to come up and talk. I know it's for closed hearings, but I don't understand these visuals in this location. So that's just my 2 cents.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. Anything on this side of the table? No? Okay. Then I'm looking for a motion, please. Once again, I can't do it, so
Let's do it.
okay.
Mr. Chair, the only thing we're changing is the setback.
Backyard.
Is it necessary to go through all that motion that we were talking about? Oh, it is? Even though that's the only thing that's changed? Very good.
Well, let me ask you, is anyone willing to make a motion, yes or no?
I'm willing to make a motion. I'm going to try it very cleverly, if I can.
Thank you, John, appreciate it.
In the spirit that sometimes we make a motion to approve and ask staff to craft the findings. This seems like a good opportunity where I would motion that we approve this PUD with the change in setback from 15 to 10, adopting the verbatim findings that can be cut and pasted from the October 10th, I think, hearing. That would be the motion.
Oh, I have a motion, and we can have the discussion on that motion, but before that, I would ask staff or legal if we can do that. I've never heard this one before.
I think you can incorporate prior findings, but I think we do need the prefatory, the introduction, telling us what the decision point is,
Sure.
and any differences that you would find. And without going back and looking at the October meetings, I'm not sure what points of the comprehensive plan we addressed, but you might want to go through those again.
Okay. Again, so the logic there is that really nothing really has substantially changed from when we made those earlier findings. You follow me? What I'm saying is, since nothing really materially changed from the, like our connection to the comp plan, the utilities, all those kind of the character of the neighborhood, all those kind of things, I think I'd touch on them, but then just revert and say what we said in October, I think still applies.
That's fine.
Okay. So let's start with a motion that would say that this matter, PUD 2.17.m, an item that's come before us tonight, a modification to the planned unit development known as Tilford Place PUD for Idaho Waterfront LLC for this 1.66 acre parcel on Tilford Lane in Riverstone Development, having come before us, we would adopt the findings B1 through B8 as written, and B1 through 8 are just statements of fact, and that B8A, that we make the finding that this, with the modification, is in conformance with the comp plan, and the comp plan analysis for this development has not changed since we looked at it back in October. Therefore, the same analysis of the comp plan connection be recorded as such. Similar.
Can I interrupt you there? Since you're making this motion, if you could, perhaps state under B8A your objectives, since this is your motion, and just those objectives, and then perhaps later you can incorporate how you want to verbally put it into your motion, anything that is basically with sewer, water, city, stuff like that. I'd appreciate it if you just list some of what you feel on B8A, your objectives, if you don't mind. Can you do that one?
Commissioner Ingalls, if it's helpful, there are 4 that were listed in October. Would you like me to state those for you?
Yeah, I'm just saying, nothing
Yeah.
has changed from, we made the same analysis back in October.
And I forget who made the motion at that
I
time.
think so. So I want to be consistent, so with regard to the connection to the comp plan, what was stated then, if you would help me, I'd like to adopt.
The objectives were 1.11, community design, 1.12, community design, 3.08, housing, and 3.05, neighborhoods. And it was Commissioner Ward that made the motion.
Okay, so if we have those in the previous motion that we want to adopt in this motion, is there any of the commissioners want to add anything at that particular, on these particular, under B88 to add to those?
I'd just like a clarification. The only thing we're changing is the 15 feet. So whatever our motion was in October, it's the same exact motion, everything the same, except we're reading 10 feet instead of 15. Is that right?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Other than the findings that Commissioner Ingalls made that just clarifies this request and the date and the public notices and all of that in this hearing. So from B8A to the end should be the same.
Okay. Continue, if you'd like to, John.
Sure. So B8B, again, I would make the finding that, the design and site planning is compatible with the location setting, with the existing uses on the properties. And that's based on the testimony we heard and the staff report showing that, the uniqueness of this PUD surrounded by, commercial development, in my opinion, would make any concerns for a reduced rear setback less of an issue, say, as opposed to surrounded by other residential development. B8C, the proposal is compatible with the natural features of the site. And I think last time we discussed that this is basically a flat, open site, very straightforward, without any kind of big, unique site constraints, so no concerns there. B8D, the location, design, and size of the proposal is such that the development will be adequately served by existing streets, public facilities, and services. And again, I would reference back the previous findings and the analysis that's in the staff report that basically says sewer and water is adequate. Transportation is not a concern. Staff has worked out, as we heard tonight, issues with access and easements and so forth, so that is supportable. B8E, per Hillary's analysis and presentation in the staff report, the 10% gross land area for open space requirement has been met. B8F, as the testimony and staff report suggests that the parking is sufficient based on comparison of what's proposed against our standards. And B8G, the proposal does provide an acceptable method for perpetual maintenance through the establishment of a functioning HOA. So with that, we would make a recommendation for approval of the planned unit development with
That should be approval of the modification of the PUD.
approval of the modification, thank you, of the PUD with the 8 special conditions that are on page 5 of my worksheet. Our worksheet. There you go.
Thank you, John. I have a motion by Ingalls, looking for a second.
I'll second.
I have a second by Rumpler. Roll call, please.
Fleming?
Did you say Fleming?
Yeah.
No.
Ingalls?
Yes.
Mandel?
Yes.
Lutrip?
Yes,
Rumpler?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes. Motion PUD 2.17.m does pass. It's a modification to the Tilford Place PUD. Thank you. Do we have any other comments or anything anyone would like to add?
Motion to adjourn?
Okay, I have a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Appreciate it.
and as we now see on television, to our new year, new chairman, dilly-dilly.